if Kwesi is the general manager in Minnesota and they want to do some things in terms of trading Kirk Cousins or rebuilding or whatever the case may be, then of course there would be a discussion, I would think, that would take place between them and the Cleveland Browns about Kirk Cousins, because as we mentioned before, the Browns are going to have to turn over every single stone to make sure they have the best team they can get going forward. That of course includes everything, including quarterback. I mean, they never said they wouldn't do that. They have to do that. I mean, Andrew Berry is obligated to try to make this team better at every single position. So.
All right, everyone. Hello and welcome in. The opening clip that you just saw there was Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com speculating and opining about the possibility of the Cleveland Browns picking up the phone this offseason and making a call to the Minnesota Vikings regarding the availability of quarterback Kirk Cousins for a potential trade this offseason. And there is some validity to that speculation, given the fact that there is now an established connection between the two franchises, with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah being the new GM of the Vikings, having previously worked for and under Andrew Berry, the current general manager of the Cleveland Browns. She has also published an article to Cleveland.com in regards to other veteran quarterbacks that the Browns could potentially pursue this offseason if they wish to move on from Baker Mayfield. So we're going to use all of that today as our point of departure to discuss the world of trade possibilities and rumors surrounding Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings. So where do we currently stand? What are the destinations for Kirk Cousins? And what are the context and really reasons that they would move on from Kirk Cousins after only 4 years? So let's get into all of that. First, let's discuss the timeline. They haven't hired a head coach yet. I expect that to come next week. But once they do, once the dust settles, it feels like that this could be pushed into warp speed, because Kirk Cousins and his $45 million cap hit for 2022 is the next big decision that they're going to have to face. There's going to be a myriad of veterans that are going to be departing from this team if they are going to make the kind of changes that it feels like they want to make with the hiring of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who represents a new direction for this franchise compared to the years that have previously been. So this could be like a 1 to 2 week kind of scenario. If you think back to last year with Matthew Stafford, who was traded about 14 days after all of the general manager and head coach positions were filled. So we could see something as warp speed as that. And I think that it would benefit them greatly if they decided to do that, so they don't find themselves behind the 8 ball when it comes to other potential candidates in the free agent market as they head into the NFL draft. So that is the timeline. Reasons that they probably want to move on from Kirk Cousins. Well, there's a number of them. We've already established the salary cap hit. We've discussed that ad nauseum. He is a very good, not great quarterback, and there's a lot of us out there that don't believe that he lives up to that amount of payroll, 20 to 22% of the salary cap going to one player, and you don't have any money to fix a defense that has been very porous and bad the last couple of seasons. So the money to pay players is going to have to come from somewhere, and I think it's going to begin with Kirk Cousins. He's going to be the tip of the iceberg when it comes to veterans that are going to be jettisoned from this team to get rid of some of their inflated contracts, to free up money to build this team in the new image of the new era that is with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah as the general manager. So another reason that I think they're probably going to move on from him is because I don't think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah with his 4-year contract is going to feel comfortable handcuffing himself to a quarterback that commands that kind of payroll, and also a quarterback that he himself did not choose. We'll probably know more once they hire the head coach and we see the coaching staff sort of flesh out and fill up with bodies about what kind of team that this is going to be in 2022. But for right now, I think that it would be in the best interest of Kwesi and the new coaching staff to sort of unhitch the wagon from Kirk Cousins so that there is no reason for them to be held responsible for any more mediocrity that they suffer with this quarterback in place. And I know people are going to say you're taking shots at him and it's not fair, and I understand that. We've had this discussion to the ends of the earth, but the reality of the situation is that change is coming. I don't know if it's going to be Bill Guerin type of change, which is kind of why I'm wearing the Minnesota Wild hat tonight. They play the Rangers later today. Bill Guerin came into the Minnesota Wild and he got rid of Mikko Koivu, Zach Parise, Ryan Suter. He traded Ryan Donato almost immediately. He got rid of the old guard. Eric Stahl is another example. He instituted change in the culture, change in the team. They're much younger and faster now. They're a much more gelled team, if you will. And Dean Evison has done a great job at running that ship And a large part of it, I think the credit goes to Bill Guerin. So I'm kind of hoping for a similar result with the Minnesota Vikings. And unfortunately, your favorite players are probably going to get traded. I'm not talking about Justin Jefferson because I don't think they would even begin to entertain that idea, but some of your favorite veterans are likely on their way out, Kirk Cousins included. So let's talk about potential landing spots. Where could he potentially wind up playing football in the NFL for 2022? So over the last few months/weeks, we have heard the rumors of potential destinations that include Denver, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Carolina, and Houston. Those are the ones that I've heard myself. Let me know if there's any that I have missed. So let's begin with the top of that list being Denver. Currently, they have quarterbacks Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. I think that they have established that neither of those guys are going to be the future of this franchise that take them to the promised land. They've just hired their new head coach, who is an offensive-minded guy, Nathaniel Hackett from the Green Bay Packers. So, that sort of gives the next incoming quarterback a little bit of a favorable landing spot because you're going to get more out of your head coach than you would potentially a defensive guy. However, I think we can shut this down because it sounds like this is the new hotbed of rumors for Aaron Rodgers potentially moving out of Green Bay to Denver. So, and the other thing is that for Kirk Cousins being a guy who probably wants to win, I don't think you're really going to accomplish all that much winning in the AFC West when you have the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Raiders. That's a very tough division. Moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger has retired, leaving a wide open position available for starting quarterback in the Steel City with the Steelers. They currently only have Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins on the roster, and I think we've seen enough of both of those guys over the past couple of years to confidently say that neither one of them is going to win that starting job if given a real opportunity. So I think the Steelers are going to acknowledge what the situation is with their quarterback spot going into this offseason, and that would be an interesting landing spot for Kirk Cousins. It's a well-run organization. They've got a lot of good pieces in place. They do need to upgrade their offensive line just a little bit, but good skill position players exist. Good defense. I think that would be a great spot for Kirk Cousins, a team that could definitely make that kind of move to stay in contention with a very competitive AFC North division. Moving on, we have the Cleveland Browns in the same position. I don't think that them moving off of Baker Mayfield is in their best interest because, with Baker Mayfield, you have one more year of team control until he's a free agent. It's only an $18 million cap hit, and he played injured last year, and he's also got not a lot of great weapons around him other than Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So maybe they go into this draft, they get Treylon Burks, sign a veteran free agent, and then allow Baker Mayfield to heal up this offseason, and they come back and run it back in 2022. So I'm just not sure that's going to happen. I understand the connection between Kwesi and Adam Berry. There's the Kevin Stefanski factor that you could figure in. Maybe he would like to bring him back, reunite those two, because you remember Kevin Stefanski's last season in Minnesota was the year that the Vikings went 10-6 and won the playoff game against the Saints. So there is some reality to that situation there. Moving on to the two teams that I think are least likely to acquire Kirk Cousins via trade this offseason are the Carolina Panthers and the Houston Texans. So the Carolina Panthers, the only reason that I could see this being realistic is because I view ownership of the Panthers, including Matt Rule, as desperate. These are guys that thought that they would be on a better track than they are right now in terms of turning this organization around when they got rid of Cam Newton and Greg Olsen and made a change a couple of years ago. The Sam Darnold trade continues to be a mistake. It's going to be a thorn in their side, and I think they're going to try their best to make up for that. So could that include a Kirk Cousins trade? I don't know. If they do, he enters a situation where he's got some pretty decent wide receivers in DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. I don't know what to make of Christian McCaffrey at this point in his career because it's seemingly he cannot stay off the injured list, and the offensive line in Carolina is not good. Houston, the only thing I wrote down for my notes is dumpster fire because that entire organization is just bananas. It sounds like they're potentially going to hire Josh McCown as their next head coach and have barely interviewed anybody else. He's the only one that I've heard so far is going to get a second interview. I can't name too many players that are currently on that roster that would benefit him. I think maybe other than Brandon Cooks. So Kirk Cousins might be walking into a serious death trap if he gets traded to Houston. So I don't think Houston's interested in doing that. They may want to see what they have in Davis Mills in 2022. So those are the destinations that I have heard of and what I think about a potential fit as a trade partner and a recipient of Kirk Cousins. Now, there's a lot of other context surrounding the situation. How much of that contract are the Vikings going to be willing to swallow in order to make this deal happen? I'm thinking at the minimum, they have to do 10 million based on how the contract is structured. Would they be willing to take on more than that? Would they go another 5? Would they go another 10? I think 15 would be, sort of a good faith offer for a team that's looking to acquire him, and also to gain the most on your return of investment, because in the post Matthew Stafford, Carson Wentz trade era, if you will. That's a weird way to call it that, but that's what I'm going to name it. We have seen in the past couple of years what starting caliber quarterbacks can demand in terms of trade value return. So they could very well get a first round pick for Kirk Cousins. They could get a player back and a second round pick. It all really is going to depend over the next couple of weeks how Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and the Minnesota Vikings view their competitive status in the NFL for 2022. They could very well go with a bridge quarterback this year. They could very well go with a rookie quarterback in the first round of the draft. They could very well do both and go into this offseason with a quarterback battle between, for example, free agent Marcus Mariota, Carson Strong, Matt Corral, whatever quarterback they decide to draft, and they still have Kellen Mond on the roster, so it could be a three-way battle to see who is the starter for 2022, and I think likely in that scenario you would see the free agent veteran win out over the rookie and the one-year player who basically had a redshirt year for his rookie season. So that is where we currently stand. Those are the rumored positions. I don't really envision this happening later than the end of February because, and I think I've already mentioned it, about how the dust settled last year and Matthew Stafford was traded rather quickly. I think it was 14 or 15 days. And they need to figure out what they're going to do. And I think that they're going to make this decision sooner rather than later. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 1, should he be traded? Number 2, where do you think he could be traded to? And number 3, what is fair market return value for a quarterback the caliber of Kirk Cousins? He's in his mid-30s, accurate, good ball thrower. He lights up the stat sheet. He's always available, never really spends too much time on the injured list, doesn't miss games because of injury. So you'd be getting a reliable starter who's been very good over a 10-year career. But the problem is you're getting a reliable starter who's been very good over a 10-year career that is likely not getting better than what he currently is. I view him as a, fringe top 10 quarterback. On his best day, he's probably top 8. On his worst day, he's probably 15. He's definitely disaster-proof. You're never going to get a Matt Schaub pick 6 extravaganza out of him. You're never going to get a Nathan Peterson interception extravaganza in the first half out of him. But, the ceiling we've already seen. There's not enough peaks to really, I'd say, justify the $45 million cap hit for the Vikings this year. And it's been inconsistent over the course of the 4 years with the Minnesota Vikings. And don't forget those first 2 seasons, for people that are going to bring it up. Vikings had really good defenses in 2018 and 2019. We still weren't able to get anything accomplished. So we're moving on from the argument about Kirk Cousins and whether or not he can win football games in Minnesota, because I think that time has come and gone. And if I were to venture a guess, and there's still a 50-50 chance that the reality is that Kirk Cousins gets extended and stays. But I think more or less I would bet that he's likely going to get moved this offseason by the new GM, the new coach, as they look for a new direction for this franchise to go. So that's going to do it for me. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.